Southfield public schools were closed Monday after a potential threat of gun violence.
Southfield police determined the threat was not credible and stemmed from a conflict between a teacher and a student that started last week. But it is far from the first time this has happened recently at local schools. In fact, closures stemming from non-credible threats are on the rise across the country. Joining us to talk about it is Corewell Health clinical social worker Courtney Robison. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So it's an unfortunate reality that this is a very real threat. This is something people would legitimately believe could happen. So what does that do to a child, especially mentally, when you're repeatedly facing these false threats of violence?
So we have to remember that the kids don't really recognize it as false. So they believe it to be a real threat, even if it's just a perceived threat. So it's really important to, if the child is showing symptoms of some anxiety and depression, is to make sure that they get some help. If you don't know where to go, you could go to your first line of defense would be your primary care provider. If you don't have one, you can go to Corewell Health. The website, there's a Find a Doctor. And what happens is you'll go see them. You're able to discuss some of your concerns. They may prescribe medications, but likely they will refer you to a therapist.
We've been talking about the fact that, it's disturbing at any point in the year, but the fact that this keeps happening and the school year just started seems to only add to the frustration and concern for a lot of parents and students. How do you know when maybe this is a bit too much for your child? How do you point out those signs of anxiety or depression?
So as a parent, you just want to read how your child is behaving if they start acting different. But I think what's really important is to have these conversations. So when we have a perceived threat or even an actual shooting, we want to take our kiddo aside and just ask them what their thoughts are on it, how they're feeling. We don't want them to have overexposure. So, having them constantly on social media looking at it can intensify their anxiety and their depression. But to have that conversation so that they know that they can be transparent with you and share how they're feeling, they're likely to talk about it.
Yeah. How do you find that balance? Do you check in with your child every time there is a shooting somewhere in the country that's making headlines or somewhere in the state? And of course you're going to if it's your child's school, but how do you find that balance?
Yeah, so for us specifically, we've had a couple that are really close to home with Oxford and Rochester.
Yeah.
So I would say when they're close to home, I would definitely check in with them. If there's somewhere where you don't know if they've had the information, just feel it out. If they're talking about it, then you want to discuss it.
Sure.
We talked with a family dynamics coach earlier this week who said for young kids, you can even have them write what she calls feeling letters, just words to express how they feel, maybe if they can't get it out. When they're really, really young, how do you have those conversations, especially? Because it can be hard for anybody at any age.
I think with the little kiddos, we would want to play with them, draw. We find that there's you could draw a big Band-Aid and have them put what hurts inside the Band-Aid and what they can't control inside the Band-Aid and what they feel is good and helpful on the outside of the Band-Aid. Things like that. You can always go online and look, on Google for different ways to interact with little ones. But I think that the really important thing is to reach out to a provider that specializes with kids.
Yeah. Any other advice for how to deal with this, even the anxiety that parents are feeling? I mean, this is just, unfortunately, it's a scary world that we live in sometimes, and it can be hard to talk about all of this.
So what I think is key here is that the parents take care of their mental health, because our children feed off of us. And if they see that we're dysregulated or that our anxiety is heightened, then they're going to also feel that. So if the parent is feeling scared, which I'm sure, a lot of the parents are having anxiety right now, they should get themselves a therapist to learn how to deal with it. So that way when they're helping their child, it's like that, put the oxygen on yourself before you can help someone else.
Yeah. All great advice. Clinical social worker Courtney Robison, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.